Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Lashing Out Podcast and the Sports Now Network. My name is Jared Pruger, and I am joined by my friend and co-host Kevin Quigley. Kevin, Penn State wins again in Minnesota. It was not pretty. It was not a big win. It was a win nonetheless, and that's what matters the most. But I want to touch on a couple things here today in our show. The first is that James Franklin executed an absolute masterclass in coaching and leadership throughout that game, especially there in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, he did. But he had to execute a perfect fourth quarter because for the first three quarters, the team played absolutely incompetent football. Going down early was tough. Just you and I talked about it in the pregame show. This was not a trap game. I'm not sure why anyone is classifying it as such because this should have been an exclusively business trip, and it ended up turning into not exclusively being a business trip. And I think you categorized it best in the title, "You're 3-0" this week was just, whew, like, goodness gracious, they got out of that one. And it's a good thing they did, right? Now, if I'm going to bash Franklin and say that the first three quarters were abysmal, I got to then give him credit for the fourth quarter because, yeah, that's probably Franklin's best coached quarter. Got some gutsy calls. The fake punt, which apparently they've called the fake punt 6 times this year, and they've audibled out of it every time. And then finally on the 7th time, it goes through, and Luke Reynolds converts that huge 4th and 1. And then, 2 more fourth downs are converted on that drive to seal the game. And for an offense that kind of struggled the entire first half, well, not the entire first half, but struggled a good amount of the first half, and then just never really got going to the point where they were putting points on the board. What a drive to seal the game.
It was a weird game. Obviously, Minnesota is better than their record indicates. They were 6-4 going into that game, and I don't think a lot of people, us included, gave them the respect that they probably deserve. PJ Fleck is a very good football coach. Obviously, they did what they wanted to do, and they took advantage of some bizarre Penn State plays.
I think what
obviously, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off. I think what you and I both missed is that Minnesota was coming off a bye.
Yes, 100%. And that's easy to do, but the one, obviously, you go in and you block that extra point, which was weird, and then you get 2 points from there. Prior to that, they had blocked a punt that one play later goes into a touchdown, and then Penn State drives the length of the field and scores yet again. So then they block that extra point. And then the defense really stepped up. They gave up only 3 points in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter each. And Tom Allen's defense, I don't think gets the love that they deserve. But a lot of that comes down to offensive execution. They were frustrated. Drew Aller was frustrated. And that's where James Franklin's masterclass in coaching comes in. You could see that he was talking on the sidelines to Drew Aller. They showed it multiple times on the CBS broadcast. But there's a moment where he's sitting on the bench, talking to Drew. He's calm, he's cool, he's collected. So many times you see coaches throughout the country, they are berating their guys. They are not talking to their guys. They're talking at them. And in that moment, he was calm. And in those moments, Drew Aller was calm. And from then on, something clicked, and Aller was flawless. And that was one of those situations where they take advantage of that. They get the fumble, obviously, as well. But for Franklin, man, whatever he dialed up worked. And the fake punt was perfect when it was called. It was well executed, obviously. And that's what you need. They went into Minnesota not expecting, I think, a game like that. I think they probably respect them a little bit more than the media did. They have access to the tape, right? And for Franklin and his team to get out of there and escape with that victory when chaos is going on throughout the country is huge for them.
Yeah, the 1-point win was all that matters. It doesn't matter how pretty it was. Like you mentioned, everyone else around the country, especially that Southeastern Conference that was very vocal in the week leading up after Tuesday night into Saturday after the college football rankings come out. That conference got shut up yesterday, I think. But credit to Penn State. They were down. They faced adversity. A lot of it self-inflicted. The blocked punt. Can't be having that. Riley Thompson is a very traditional punter, but he also does the rugby style. I think he's going to learn that you don't go to the rugby style six step punt in your own end zone, and hopefully he grows from that. And then just the block extra point was just weird, just a weird blocking scheme. Minnesota also threw the kitchen sink at Penn State, the double reverse flea flicker.
That was the touchdown after the block punt.
Yeah, and then just one play. Potentially they play with as a man coverage. The person who was supposed to be blocking him was the person who looked like had coverage on on Gears was Zaki Wheatley. Zaki Wheatley gets caught up in the eye candy because who wouldn't? It's a double reverse and you want to flow with the ball. But then Zaki, he had a good game otherwise, and he recovers the key fumble. What was it, the first play of the second half? Or no, it was the first play of the fourth quarter. So really kicked off the fourth quarter. So an up and down game, tumultuous. I don't think anyone on Penn State's team had their best game of the season. Probably a bad time to be doing that, but they come out with a win. The team is going to be a lot stronger after this one because they didn't just go in and coast to a 2 or 3 score game victory. It's a good game that you will be thankful for in about 4 weeks from today, a month from today, when hopefully they're hosting a game at Beaver Stadium for the playoffs. But yeah, there's not much else you can say besides the game was probably too close. Maybe not as prepared in the first quarter. Maybe a very inspired Minnesota team came out, probably more so than what Penn State was expecting. But sometimes the best games are the ones where you get your teeth kicked in a little bit, and that's definitely what happened on Saturday. But
you take away the blocked extra point. There was 2 points, and you take away the touchdown right after the block punt, and the complexity of the game is completely flipped.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you mentioned too, which is good as far as strengthening the team, they needed something like this. They were down, they had to come back, and they had to hold on. And they did exactly that. That's something they weren't able to do against Ohio State. Or Ohio State and Minnesota in the same league. Conference, yes, but obviously Ohio State's the number 2 team in the country for a reason. But again, Penn State comes back, holds on, and that's the makings of a truly good team. There's so many times, and we're going to talk about this at length in the second segment, that teams just aren't holding on. And for Penn State to be able to do that, obviously they stay at number 4 in the AP. The college football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday. I don't expect them to be anywhere but 4th. I could see maybe 5th, but they have the best loss, really, in the country to this point. Them and Indiana. And Indiana's loss is bad because they got their doors blown in. But again, we're going to talk about that in the second segment. For Franklin, though, this is a big win. This wasn't a ranked win by any means, but again, you're putting your team in position to win. They start off a little slow, which is not uncommon. However, they dial it up. And again, back to that Tom Allen defense, they played lights out in that second half. And they really didn't do a terrible job in the first half either. Their backs were against the wall quite a few times in situations that they really couldn't control themselves.
Yeah, I think for me, the worst part of the game was just the slow offensive start. 3 drives in the first quarter resulted in, I believe, 35 yards of total offense in the first quarter. So if you came off the bus and you were motivated, a couple weird 4th down calls. They go for the field goal when maybe they should have gone for it on 4th down. Wait, didn't they go for a field goal? I'm sorry, I'm all turned around. But no, they punted when they maybe maybe should have gone for it, and then they go for it when they maybe shouldn't have gone for it. That was the third down and 11 QB draw play, and then they went for it on 4th and 4. Maybe that's not the play call. It felt like the Ohio State game, and the fact that they were just trying too hard. They were trying too hard to find the perfect play call, and like it's not free flowing. Like they've got to get comfortable in big games when they're under pressure of getting good play calls. And Kotelnicki will learn, but I just was hoping for more from the offense there. And then I don't think it can be understated that I mean, I texted you this. I think Katron Allen was suspended for the first half. I don't know if he missed the bus, was late for a meeting, or what happened, but the fact that he didn't even see the field in the first half and then it makes a big impact plays on the first series of the second half leads me to believe that there was some discipline going on for Katron Allen this weekend. It's now purely speculation, but that's definitely going to play a part in the offense because now Nick Singleton's not fresh because he's having to play every drive, every down. So there was just another dynamic there for Penn State to overcome some self-inflicted team adversity.
Yeah, and I think that's the tough thing. Obviously, we don't know what goes into that, but yeah, I mean, it was Katron. Katron came in the second half after not getting a touch, not getting a single carry, and not seeing the field, and it's very bizarre for the way that Penn State handles things. But again, they were able to withstand that, and they came away with the victory. And we're going to talk about those teams that maybe didn't come away with the victory when we come back for the second segment of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the second segment of the Lashing Out Podcast and the Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jared. Kevin, Penn State did something that not many teams in the Big Ten, or not in the Big Ten, but in the top 10 in the country did on Saturday, and that was win. And at this point of the season, that's what matters the most. Penn State escaped with a victory. It was a 1-point victory, but that didn't happen for Alabama. That did not happen for Texas A&M. That didn't happen for quite a few teams throughout the country, and it had some significant impact throughout the top 25. And you look at Indiana. Indiana got boat raced with a 23-point loss at Ohio State. Ohio State's in a position where they win this week against Michigan in the game. They go to the Big Ten championship game, and they play Oregon, who was idle. Oregon just got to sit back and relax this week. But you look at some of those games, Ole Miss laid an egg, and that was huge against Florida. The Gators are playing some really good football. Alabama losing put them at 3 losses and outside the top 12. And I think they're going to be out of the playoff, barring anything unforeseen ahead of them. But we had talked about the ACC and the Big 12 being not great. BYU lost yet again. Colorado also lost. So their more than one bid hopes are extinguished, in my opinion. My beloved Boise State is up to 11, and my ACC championship pick, SMU, is now within the top 10 for the first time since the Reagan administration.
Yeah, I think let's start closest to home. Indiana, an embarrassing performance against Ohio State. Kind of one you and I saw coming. I don't know. I think you're in the same boat as me.
I think we both had them getting beat pretty big. They needed to keep that close, but they did not.
IU put up a grand total of 153 total yards of offense. Granted, that game was at the Big House, but man, if you're gonna hold on to your claim that you deserve to be in the college football playoff, you need to put up more than 150 yards of total offense. Granted, that might be more than what Penn State had last year against Ohio State. I think for some reason 130 sounds good to me for a yardage total for Penn State. That might have been it was either the Michigan and Ohio State game was down in that territory. So can't really fault them for that one, but also Penn State didn't make the playoff last year. It was only 4 teams, but I think IU's still in by virtue of only having one loss and that one loss coming to the number 2 team in the country. Will they be number 1 after the Big Ten championship game? Who knows? I think they are very much cruising and hoping for that rematch, and I think they are going to be very much fired up for that one. and a neutral site primetime game versus having to travel all the way to Eugene, Oregon for that one. Texas and Kentucky was close there for a bit. Texas kind of opened it up in the second quarter, but Kentucky held them. I think it was tied in the middle of the second quarter there. Yeah, and then Alabama, man. Road loss to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's without their top 5 wide receivers. They're all
And
hurt.
this is not an Oklahoma team of like last year or Lincoln Riley's Oklahoma teams who were in the college football playoff. This is a 5-5 Indiana team. 5-5.
Yeah, and Jackson Arnold hasn't looked fantastic, but again, his top 5 wide receivers are hurt. I think 5 defensive starters are hurt for Oklahoma. Like, this is a very much wounded duck. Brent Venables is doing the best that he can with what players he has left. And then Alabama puts up a whopping 3 points. Their lowest point total in 20 years, which was that's a big number. 20 years is a long time. I think it was 189 games that they have scored more than 10 points. They should have scored 10, though, because that bogus illegal formation on the Ryan Williams touchdown. If you guys can find the replay of that, that thing was that guy. He's only 17. He's a true freshman. He's got to be one of the best receivers in the country already. Like, that was just a phenomenal catch. George Pickens, like esque, Odell Beckham, you name it. The catches are there. So, yeah. But I mean, I don't know about you, but do you take joy in Alabama being a 3-loss team now for the first time since pre-Saban, or like second or third year Saban? Like, it's kind of refreshing.
It's weird. It's weird because I think if Saban was there, I think it would be more refreshing. But obviously, it's a brand new head coach, Kalen DeBoer, who's not a bad coach by any means, still trying to sort their way. But I think this is kind of the microcosm of what this season is, because you and I have talked about this all year. This brand of college football is awesome. Like, there were 20 games that mattered on Saturday, and we don't always see that at this point in the season. Every game matters. Every game is big, and that is, to me, what's cool. Like, when you put it in perspective, the numbers in the AP poll, we'll use the AP because it's fresh, but the number 7 team, the number 9 team, the number 13, or I'm sorry, the number 14 team, and the number 15, 16, and 18 teams all lost on one day. That's just absurd. I mean, you look at the college football playoff. Obviously, Indiana was 5th, Alabama 7th, Ole Miss 9. You know, you've got BYU at 14, Texas A&M 15, Colorado 16, Army 19. Like, those teams all losing is just, it shows how close teams are in talent. Like, the whole debate is the SEC versus the Big Ten, blah, 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 right? Like, you can't really compare them because one plays 9 conference games versus 8. The top of the Big Ten is typically a lot heavier than certain leagues. But again, the SEC, that's kind of, the parity is there now. Like, that's the one thing that the transfer portal and NIL has really done. It's leveled the playing field, and that's what we're seeing this year. But there are so many teams that schedules are not strong. You know, Penn State's fortunate; they have five wins against teams that have 6 or more wins, which is not like in Indiana or even in Texas. So that matters. You have to keep winning, and so many times these SEC teams aren't winning. You know, you have Tennessee with 2 losses, or I'm sorry, yeah, with 2 losses. You have all of these teams now. You know, you got Georgia with 2 losses. They're probably going to be in the SEC championship game with Texas. You got Tennessee with 2 losses. You've got Clemson with 2 losses. Your alma mater sneaking around the chicken coop to make the playoff. And then you've got Alabama with 3. You've got Ole Miss with 3. They are effectively eliminated. The same thing with Texas A&M. You know, unless something drastic happens ahead of them, it's kind of wild to say, but I think this is going to be a year where Alabama's not going to make the playoff.
No, they're not. And how ironic is it that the first year of the 12-team playoff, James Franklin's probably in the 14 playoff. If Ohio State beats Oregon It would be 3 Big Ten teams in Texas, assuming Texas beats Georgia in the SEC championship game. That's what the top 4 would look like this year.
Mm-hmm.
Because Notre Dame is one lost team, but they lost to Northern Illinois. And if you're the committee, do you take the team that lost to Ohio State, who's going to be in the playoff, or do you take the team who lost to Northern Illinois? Like
flashback of 2016.
Yeah, but
but yes, right?
Right. How ironic, like how James Franklin is it that in the first year of the 12 team, James Franklin probably would have been in the 4 team. I mean, and because like no one else, like everyone else has 2 losses. There's 5 teams in the country with 1 loss or less. There's only 1 undefeated team left, and that's Oregon. So in years past, it's been 3 or 4 teams that have gone undefeated through 12 games. And here we are. I think Indiana was the last one to fall in the week. What is this, week 12, week 13 of the college football season? But like the fact that there was only 2 unbeatens left, by the end of October, the season has been awesome. So let's see. Miami needed a big 4th quarter against Wake Forest to pull away from there. Like another just sleepy game from Miami. I'm really hopeful.
Listen, you know how I feel. I love the Mustangs, man. I think SMU is going to win the ACC championship game and get that automatic bye, and I think that's going to be great for them.
I really hope that they just blow the doors off Miami in the ACC championship game. Like that would be so awesome.
Yeah, Miami's beatable. They've shown that they can get beat. Obviously, Georgia Tech beat them, but Georgia Tech's got Georgia this week. That could be a bad game for Georgia.
Georgia did get a tune-up game this week.
Yeah, against UMass. But you look at how it's going to be. The winner of the Oregon-Ohio State game is essentially going to be the number 1 seed in the Big Ten champion. You got Texas. As long as they win the SEC, they're going to be the 2 seed. You look at
I don't know who's going to win. I don't know who's going to win the Big 12.
Well, half the league is still eligible. There are 9 teams that are still in line for the SEC or for the Big 12 championship. So the Big 12, I think, is going to get they're gonna be out of the automatic buys, right? So you've got the ACC champion that will get the 3 seed, and that's going to be SMU. It could be Miami or it could be Clemson. It's probably going to be Miami, but SMU versus Miami and Charlotte. And then it's going to be, I think, Boise State. Boise State escaped a tough one against Wyoming Saturday night, but I think they're going to get that 4 seed. And then it's going to be the loser of the Big Ten championship game is going to be the 5. I think Penn State gets the 6. Notre Dame, as long as they don't lay an egg against USC, will get the 7. Then I think it's going to be the loser of the SEC championship game, which could be Georgia or possibly Tennessee. And then probably Tennessee gets a bye, or not a bye, but it has to play on the road. Then you get Indiana in there, possibly Clemson, and whoever else. And I think that 4-team bid for the SEC, I think that went up in flames with Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M losing.
Yeah, I think the SEC's done. If you are, it's unfortunate that Penn State probably can't get. If you lose the Big Ten championship game, it feels like you have an automatic bye into the semifinals.
Yes, 100%. Because I mean, if it's Ohio State, they're going to be 2 losses, but their 2 losses are going to be the same team, and you can't. This is where it goes back to, like, can you punish a team for playing in the conference championship? And I don't think that you can.
I don't think so. But like, say Ohio State loses, they're going to get the Big 12 championship champion, which is probably going to be, I think, Arizona State. Arizona State's hot. Like, it feels like they are the They are the team that's peaking right now in the Big 12. If they can get to the game, if they can get to the championship game, which I think they're leading the conference by tiebreakers, I think they are winning. So like Ohio State would have to play Arizona State and then Boise State. Those of the teams that have to play in the first round, that would be the easiest path to the semifinal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the loser of the Big 12 championship game is in a good spot. And then right now, like Oregon, should they win, would have to play the winner of Notre Dame and whoever the 8 seed is. Well, it's going to be whoever the 8 seed is. But looking at it, like Alabama lost, IU lost, Ole Miss lost.
The
Like
problem
the
for the
whole
Big
bracket
12,
from this week is all sorts of jumbled.
right?
It's
Yeah. The biggest problem for the Big 12 though is that their highest ranked team is Arizona right now, and they're 14th. So they're not even in the top 12. And to get 2 into that, it's going to be tough. That's why I think that third ACC team comes in, and you're going to get 4 from the Big 10, because I do think that Indiana gets in unless they lay an egg this week. And that's possible. You know, you come off that big time loss. How is your team going to respond? Right?
They're playing Purdue.
Well,
they're at home. They're at home against Purdue. I think they're a prime time game at home against Purdue. I think they're all right.
We're going to see how they can respond.
The question is, if Miami loses the championship game to SMU with 2 losses, now they have to go to Syracuse this week. With 2 losses, does that jump Clemson in? Because Clemson's 12th. I don't know if Miami can fall below Clemson. I don't know that. I don't think they can. I think Clemson's going to be odd man out.
I think that's kind of how it looks, because you look at the way that the Big Ten is set up. You got 4 teams there. You got Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana. You've got the group of 4 team, which is going to be Boise State, and you got Notre Dame, which is an at-large. They're not in a conference. They don't exist. That's 6 teams. Okay. Then you've got Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee, which is 9. And then I think you've got SMU, Miami, and the Big 12 champion. Because I don't think the Big 12 is a 2-bid league, not this year. Clemson, being that they have had some competence lately, I think they are close. But again, you know, with the way that Miami and SMU are in the rankings, you can't punish a team for playing in a conference championship, because Penn State's not going to play in a conference championship. Notre Dame's not going to play in a conference championship, and neither is one of Georgia or Tennessee, and definitely Indiana. So I mean, that's a big problem. Now, of course, Boise State could lose in the Mountain West championship and throw this all into the wind, but I think that's kind of how it's going to look. The loser of SMU, Miami, in my opinion, is probably going to get that last home game for to host.
I think that's the way it's going to go. We'll see how the committee decides it on Tuesday night. Granted, before anything happens, but I think if you are in the top 12 and you make it to your conference championship game, if the week before the conference championship games it looks like you would be in the playoff, I think you're in.
100%, yeah.
Like Miami, yeah, I mean, there's no way Miami can fall below Clemson should they lose, or SMU can fall below Clemson because they went 1 loss in the regular season. Right. Their regular season was better than Clemson's. So if they're in before conference championship weekend, I think what we'll see is the conference championship weekend just becomes seeding.
This is probably the most intriguing college football playoff ranking you're going to see, because I think this is going to be a big indicator of who's going to make it and who's not. Because we're just going off the AP poll for this one. Again, there's so much that has to play out, and a lot of these teams are going to play each other, but a lot of these teams aren't going to be playing either. And I think that's a factor as well. You know, you look at the coaches poll, which I think is a pretty good indicator of where people think things are, because those are the coaches. Those are the ones that see teams in a different light. And you see Penn State is number 4 in both. I think they're 4 in the CFP. That doesn't necessarily mean anything because they're going to end up being a non-conference champion. But what's going to be really interesting is how they view the Georgias, the Tennessees, in Indiana. Like, I'm very intrigued to see where Indiana comes in all of this. Because if that's a closer win or closer loss, I should say, I think it's a completely different situation. But they got their doors blown in the one and only time they played somebody that was competent.
Yeah. Indiana's position is going to be interesting, and I think Clemson's is as well.
And while we have a couple days to do that, we only have one more segment left in this one, and we're going to preview Maryland as it's Thanksgiving, and there will be plenty of football to be watched going into the final game of the regular season. So we're going to preview Maryland when we come back for the third and final segment of the Lasching Out podcast. Welcome back to the Lasching Out podcast and the Sports Now Network. I'm Jared. He's Kevin. Kevin, you got the Terps, and this has been a pretty one-sided. I don't want to call it a rivalry because I don't think it's a rivalry, but this has been a pretty lopsided slate of affairs between the Terps and Penn State. Historically, Maryland has one conference win. Penn State is a 24.5-point favorite at Beaver Stadium to wrap this one up.
Yeah, and Maryland's coming in on a 4-game losing streak. Minnesota, Oregon, Rutgers, and Iowa is their 4-game. They did squeak one out against USC. That's their only conference win this year. So 3:30 Big Ten Network. If you are still in your turkey hangover on Saturday, it's the messaging is simple for this one. We win this one, we're playing December. Was it 21st? Home game in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only messaging that needs to happen this week. Focus, do your job, show up at 3:30. Not like Minnesota. It's a home game. We don't have to travel. Hopefully, people's families are in town. Like everyone's involved, everyone's bought in, and the messaging is just go win, and we're in. That's the only thing that needs to be on the billboard this week.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's kind of the crazy thing with the way that the season has gone. Just go out and handle business. That's a 3:30 game. The game is at noon, big noon. Ohio State loves big noon. Big noon loves Ohio State. It's like their 17th game at big noon in a row. And that's just a slight exaggeration. But, that's the game that everybody's going to have their eyes on. The whole country's going to be watching Ohio State and Michigan. It would be quite funny if Ohio State did lose to Michigan, because that means Penn State plays in the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. And that is, that's wild to me. I think it would be funny if Michigan pulled one out there. I don't think that that's going to happen. I do think that Ohio State is one of the best, if not the best team in the country. But again, that's why you play the game. And for Penn State, they've just got to go out and handle business. If they can go out and handle business, I think they're going to be in good shape. Maryland has done nothing but lose this year, outside of beating UConn, Virginia, Villanova, and USC. And in their losses, they have lost every game except for Michigan State by double digits.
Yeah, Maryland's been uncompetitive with Talia not being there. Kind of just feels like a full reset year for Maryland. Just show up, win the game. That's all you can ask for, and then you get little over a month to, or a little less than a month to prepare for a home playoff game. So Exciting stuff. But you know who else has some exciting stuff? Good Dog Beverage. They just launched a new product line, so if you can find it, go get it. They have all new bourbon canned cocktails. They have bourbon tea, bourbon ginger orange, bourbon lemonade, and bourbon watermelon. So, new variety pack for you guys to go out and try. Just a reminder, through Good Dogs Leverage the Beverage Program, they donate a portion of the profits from every case sold and 100% of the merchandise sales profits to provide service dogs for people in need. You can go to gooddogbeverage.com. That's good, DOGG beverage.com to find merchandise and the closest retailer carrying Good Dog beverages to you. I actually played golf on Friday with some Good Dog beverage golf tees, and my tee lasted the whole round. So they make premium stuff all around.
Well, that's always good. And I don't think that Penn State is going to be a dog in any of their, and obviously they're not going to be a dog against Maryland. And I think if they get a home playoff game, I don't think they're going to be a dog either. And I think that's very beneficial because the one thing that James Franklin has done, beat teams that he's supposed to beat.
Yeah, and it might not be against the spread, but that's a Vegas thing. All that matters is putting a win in the win column on the record book. And you know, that's I strongly feel that they're going to be able to do that this weekend. Like you said, just an incredibly one-sided quote unquote rivalry. Penn State seemingly goes into Maryland every year and steals the top 5 recruits from the state. Maryland's left with the so-called scraps from there after the recruiting visits. So, yeah, so it feels like it's a bigger game for Maryland to come up for than Penn State to get excited for. But with the playoff on the line, with the stakes of the game, doesn't feel like this is a game that they can sleepwalk through.
No, Penn State needs to come out ready to play. They need to treat this like a playoff game, and come out ready to go from the start. And if they're capable and able of doing that, I think that they're in really good shape. And I think, you know, you have to leave no doubt. Obviously, style points are good, and I think we're going to get a good indication of that during the next college football playoff rankings. How they view wins versus losses, because in the AP and the coaches, Penn State didn't go anywhere. And you know, you look at Notre Dame and what they did to Army. They dismantled them at Yankee Stadium, which isn't the first time that a team has gotten destroyed at Yankee Stadium lately. Sorry for Yankees fans, even though I am one. It is what it is. But you know, it's one of those situations where it didn't necessarily help Notre Dame because Notre Dame still has that horrific loss. And there is value in that loss for everybody else. But Penn State also won. You know, they, again, are they the number 4 team in the country this year? They've done everything but beat Ohio State. And at the end of the day, wins do matter.
Yep, they certainly do. I don't think Notre Dame is in Penn State's in any jeopardy of getting jumped by Notre Dame, despite that massive win for Notre Dame against Army.
That jump would have had to have come this week, and it didn't.
Yeah,
although again, in the AP and the coaches, it's different than the CFP, so it'll be interesting to see kind of where things are on Tuesday.
I think I would go full SEC fan and complain about the rankings if Notre Dame jumped Penn State. Doesn't seem like Notre Dame's played that hard of a schedule compared to Penn State, and the losses, when you compare them, a loss to Ohio State is much more respectable than a loss to Northern Illinois at home and a team that you paid to come beat you. I hope the committee feels that way.
You know, and I think I hope so too. And it's, you know, there's going to be so much that can change between now and then. Again, we talked about what we think is going to happen the rest of the way in the second segment. And Penn State should be in. I think they're in. If they lose to Maryland, they probably don't deserve to be in. But the beauty is they don't have to play if things go their way, right? Now, if things go their way and Michigan wins, Penn State gets an extra game, which would be beneficial to see where you stack up against Oregon. But now you don't have to play. You get 2 weeks off. And that is huge this time of year.
Yeah, the double rest, an extra week rest compared to everybody else who has played a conference championship game. I think is why I'm rooting for Ohio State to beat Michigan because, quite simply, I don't. The rest, is second bye week, um, it just seems that much more important to Penn State um, than to go play Oregon and travel to Indianapolis and just it ruins your tape. Like coaching staff could be watching tape of the 4 or 5 opponents who they think it could be. Instead, they're sitting at home watching Oregon, and then um, they only have a week to prepare. They have a 1 bye week versus 2. So kind of just hope Ohio State wins. We don't have to worry about them going to Indianapolis and not to be a defeatist and say I don't want to go play Oregon. I don't want to win the Big Ten, but they're
It's a
in.
weird way to have to look at it now because there's value in playing the conference championship, but there's also value in being able to rest for 2 weeks and getting a home game where a team like Tennessee or Miami or whoever is going to have to come to Beaver Stadium, and that's crazy.
Yeah, that definitely feels like a team from the South is going to have to travel to Beaver Stadium.
Yeah, and the way that it looks, I think the Big 12 champion is going to end up going to Ohio State. And then it's who's next? Is that going to be Miami? Is that going to be whoever? And I think that's kind of the wild thing about it. Is that going to be Indiana? Is that
Feels like it's going to be the loser of the Big 12 or the SEC championship game.
The ACC championship game, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, loser the ACC or the SEC championship.
Yeah,
games
and I would stay away. I want to stay away from SMU, but I would love to see Miami and Cam Ward come to Beaver Stadium and have to win a game in 20-degree weather.
Yeah, that would be. I think I would like to play Miami, just because
Miami. Obviously, I think you want to challenge yourself. You look at Georgia and Tennessee. Georgia, I think, is going to end up with a home game, which isn't a bad thing for them. Though they're going to have 3 losses if they lose in the SEC championship game. So that's going to be interesting to kind of to look out for. But there's just so much more that can happen. But for Penn State, again, it's what we've been saying for quite some time now. They've just got to take care of their business and keep winning. If they can keep winning, good things are going to continue to happen to the Nittany Lions.
Yep, that's win this week, win on Saturday, and then we're hosting a game at Beaver Stadium.
That's right. And we will catch you guys after that game. We'll have plenty more to come about the Terps after Penn State's game against them this weekend. We're going to take the rest of the week off to celebrate Thanksgiving and eat and watch some terrible Thanksgiving Day football between the Cowboys and the Giants and whoever else plays the Lions on Thursday. But the Cowboys did win on Sunday begrudgingly in what was quite possibly the wildest 6 minutes of football gameplay I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was 41 points scored in the fourth quarter. That was a lot of points.
Yeah, they housed 2 kickoff returns, gave up a 70 or 85-yard touchdown, and then missed an extra point, and then they housed an onside kick. And it was,
I'm sorry I missed that one.
That
would have been a good game to see.
No, I mean it was 13-9 going into the fourth quarter. And
if you had the under going into the fourth quarter, you were loving life.
Yeah, and then miraculously points were scored and things happened that you don't ever really see happen. And I wanted the Cowboys to lose so they could get a better draft pick. And here we are. We're gonna get Cooper Rush and Tommy DeVito on Thursday night, and that's exactly what the Pilgrims wanted to see.
I mean, you could have lost the Browns in very ugly fashion on Thursday night.
No, instead the Cowboys have beat both the Browns and the Steelers. So my life is pretty full, no matter how bad the season gets for Cowboys, solely for bragging rights purposes. But Kevin, any parting shots before we go?
No, I'm good. Thanksgiving, let's be positive this week.
That's right. Stay positive, stay grateful, be thankful. We're thankful for everybody for tuning in. We will catch you again after the Maryland game. Thanks as always for listening. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll catch you again next week.